should have thought about that before. All these years, I've tried to be a good example for my employees, encouraging them to abstain from drink and fornication. And now my own daughter.
Do not drink, Father.
You obviously haven't abstained from anything else, though. You're a disgrace. A disgrace to your family, a disgrace to me. Go! I never want to see your face again.
But where should I go, Father?
Go to the man responsible. He's had his pleasure. Now let him do his duty by you. My duty is clear. Get out! And never darken this door again.
Good morning, Father.
Good afternoon, Frederick.
Well, I was wondering if I could have a word.
You are having a word, Frederick.
Yes, well, it's about my allowance, actually, sir.
Oh, the perfectly adequate, nay, generous allowance which I give you, yes.
Yes, well, well, look, I was wondering if perhaps I could have an advance on next month's?
May I ask why?
Well, it's just I'm a bit short, actually.
A little short.
Yes.
A little short, are you? I'll tell you why. Because you've been gambling on the horses again, haven't you? After I expressly forbade it.
Look, I'll never do it again, Father. I mean, it's just, well, I owe quite a bit to a chap who's going to get nasty if I don't pay up. I happen to know, actually, that he broke a man's legs, actually, when he didn't pay.
Seems to me a little chastisement along those lines might be the only way to break you of this habit.
Father, you don't mean that.
Better a few broken bones than an eternity in hell, my boy.
But Father!
Not another penny to get from me until your next allowance is due, and that's my final word. My final word, Frederick. Yes, Father.
Albert, what's wrong with Freddie?
Oh, my dear, I will not sully your ears.
Albert.
To the point, Adelaide. What is this?
Oh, Albert, it's quite unexceptionable, I assure you. Why, the vicar himself.
The vicar. The vicar. Since when do we accept the vicar as the arbiter of proper behaviour in this family? If our minister up at the manse caught sight of you reading this rubbish, he would be both shocked and disappointed. Too much reading of trashy novels, I'm afraid. I did, Rose. I did. Your mistress would like you to take this volume and burn it, Rose.
No.
Yes, sir. Oh, and there's a gentleman at the door to see you, sir.
Ah, a gentleman.
Well, no, not actually a gentleman. My mistake. It's Charlie Hawkins from the factory.
Oh, tell him I'm not at home. 2 minutes past 1, and still no sign of the luncheon gong. Oh, my dear, you really must organise this household more efficiently. If I ran my factory like this, where would I be, eh? Far too much reading of trashy novels, I'm afraid.
I'll go and see Cook right away.
You can't go in there, Charlie! Yes!
Oh, look, I will not have profanity in this house. And how dare you... All right. Rose, you may leave us.
Yes, sir.
Now, be brief, my man. Time is money.
Oh, no. Means nothing to you, does it? You took my job away from me. What about my wife and my 19 little uns? You're really not going to get another job when I've been turned out of this one. We'll starve, Mr. Johnson. We'll starve.
You should have thought of that while you were lying like a sloth in your bed on a Sunday morning, instead of being at service like a Christian. You knew the rules, Hawkins.
But I weren't being no sloth, sir. I weren't being no sloth. My wife were ill. And boy, I can't leave all them youngins with my daughter Mary Ann, what with her being a bit soft in the head, you know.
Oh, it's not my fault your family is so extensive. You and your wife ought to have had a little more self-control.
We could afford a candle, sir.
Candles?
Well, there's a lot else you can do when it's dark, is there, sir?
Oh, it's enough of that sort of talk. Now, the fact remains that you are not seen in church for 2 Sunday mornings running, and that means, as you very well know, you forfeit your job in the factory. Luncheon! I think we're finished, Hawkins.
Oh, no, we're not. No, you're gonna be sorry you crossed with me, Mr. Iron Mighty Johnson.
Oh, Rose, show Hawkins out.
Come on, Charlie.
Mary, you are a very good scullery maid. But honestly, the way you make that pastry when you're in the kitchen with me is dreadful. Now, I've told you before, the family really like thin pastry, not great big, thick chunks for the jam tart. You're such a silly girl sometimes.
But I can get her. But I get her first.
I don't know what that was. Oh my goodness. Now, did I get those gherkins? Miss Agatha said to be sure to get some more. If she didn't eat gherkins and ice cream in the middle of the night, I'd be able to keep my larder stocked. Gherkins and ice cream. I don't know what's happened to the girl. And she's putting on weight, I notice. That's more than can be said for Mr. Freddy. He's losing weight. I think the boy's in love. Now, where's that scent he asked me to get? Ah, here it is. Sweet Love True. Oh, smell that, Mary Ann. Oh, yuck, it smells like yucky poo. Ow! You little devils, you! Right, I'm going to go and tell your mother. She'll sort you out, she will. Mrs. Hawkins! Mrs. Hawkins!
You two see Mr. Frederick?
No, only Johnson's old cook.
I thought Master said you had to do the washing. She's got the rent man coming. Says she don't want to send her feet. Oh. Get up on the wall, Ruby. Why me? Because I'm going to give you what for it if you don't. That's why. Can you see the church clock? Yes. Well, what does it say? Tick-tock. Stop looking about. What's the time by the clock?
Well, the big hen's putting down North Street and the little hen's putting out that pigeon.
Ah, nearly 2:30.
Why do you want to know?
You'll see in a minute.
Now get down before we break in. Oh, go on, tell us. Shh. no good.
Good thing somebody's cleaned the window.
That was me.
Oh, look, he's got a hold of her.
That's disgusting.
Oh, put her down too.
He's gonna swallow her in a minute.
Where have they gone now?
I can't see them. I'm bored.
He's coming out.
Don't you worry, Rose. I'll have another pop the old man right now. Everything will be fine.
I wonder what he meant.
Who knows? You're all mad, those Johnsons.
Freddie, your father is dead.
What?
I suppose you'd better go for Constable Seymour.
Surely the doctor.
Freddie, your father has been stabbed.
You don't mean murdered? In his study? Look after Rose. That was horrible.
Who could have done it?
I know.
What, you, Rose?
It was Charlie Hawkins. He was here this morning and he said as how the master would be sorry.
Wait a minute, is that the chap that Father let go from the factory? Well, if he did that, then if he did it, he'll have laid it by now. I'll go and get the constable, Mother.
Yes, Freddie, go quickly.
Mrs. Johnson, do you know of anyone who would want to harm your husband?
Well, Only this Charlie Hawkins, the man my husband dismissed from the factory.
I have men looking out for him, sir.
I see. In the meantime, a couple of questions. When did you last see your husband alive?
Well, we had lunch together, and after lunch he said he had some work to do in his study.
That's where the body was found, Inspector Kent.
I did inspect the murder scene, Constable.
Yes.
And it was Rose Palmer that found the body?
That's right. I think it was about 3:30.
And can you tell me where you were between lunchtime and 3:30, please, Mrs. Johnson?
Why do you want to know that? You surely can't think.
I just want to get a picture clear in my mind of where everybody was at the time of the murder.
Well, I went to my sitting room for a little while, and then I went for a walk.
Did anyone see you?
No, I don't believe they did.
Very well, Mrs. Johnson. That'll do for now. I would like to see your daughter Agatha now.
Well, so should I. Nobody has seen her since breakfast time. I can't think where she can be.
Sorry, sir. I forgot to say I had men looking out for Miss Johnson.
Constable, I cannot operate if I do not have all the facts. All the facts.
Sorry, sir.
Oh, dear. Very well, I'll speak to Mr. Johnson next. If you could send him in, Mrs. Johnson.
Very well. But I don't think he knows any more about it than I do.
Nevertheless. Went for a walk, eh? Not a very good alibi, Constable.
You surely can't think that Miss Johnson would kill her own husband, can you, sir?
Constable, tomorrow we're going to have a detective inspector land on us, and it'll be the same old thing. You local bobbies are too busy doffing your cap at the local gentry. We have to keep an open mind.
Yes, sir.
Sit down, Mr. Johnson. Can you tell me your movements between 1 and 3:30 this afternoon?
Oh, well, I went for a walk.
You went for a walk.
Yes.
Where?
Well, I walked up Ham Hill.
Why?
Well, I needed to think.
About what?
I don't believe that's any of your business.
Sir, this is a murder inquiry, and you will answer my questions. Do you understand?
Very well.
Right.
Well, if you must know, I'd had a bit of a row with my father.
Oh, yes?
Yes, well, he refused to give me an advance on my allowance. But if you think that I could honestly do that to my father, you're very much mistaken. I could never do that to him.
Well, if you don't mind me saying, you don't seem particularly upset about his death, Mr. Johnson.
Well, to tell you the truth, I'm not. I didn't kill him, but, well, I can't pretend I'm not glad he's dead. We never got on, really.
Did you see anyone whilst you were walking on Ham Hill?
No.
And what time did you get back to the house?
Oh, I don't remember, actually.
Roughly.
Well, I lost track of time, you see.
But you were here at the time the body was discovered.
Yes, I was.
Right. Well, that's all for now, Mr. Johnson.
Excellent.
Don't leave the house, will you, sir?
Very well.
Right. I think we'll have the maid in now, Constable.
There was blood everywhere. Never seen nothing like it. I shall have nightmares, I know I will.
And can you tell me where you were between lunchtime and the time you found the body?
Well, sir, I was in the kitchen helping cook here at the lunch things, and then Mrs. Johnson said as how I could have a couple of hours to myself.
And what did you do?
I went for a walk.
Of course you did. Of course you did. And where did you go?
I walked up the factory and back.
And I suppose nobody saw you?
Well, no, sir, they were all inside, see?
I see, Rose. Now, are the Johnsons good people to work for?
Yes, sir.
And would you say that it was a happy home?
Oh, yes, sir.
Right, that'll do, Seymour. Perhaps you could check and see if they found this Hawkins fellow yet.
Charlie, what have you done?
It's nothing, Rose. You let go of it.
Right, release him. Rose, you can leave now.
Where was he picked up, Constable?
In the High Street, sir.
Mr. Hawkins. Is this blood?
Oh, suppose so.
And whose blood is it?
Lost the cap yourself, I suppose. Oh, you know, he broke a glass of the pub. What's it all about, anyway?
Sit down, please, Mr. Hawkins. Right. Mr. Hawkins, Mr. Albert Johnson has been murdered.
Strength? You think I did it?
What, did you?
No, I didn't. God knows I had reason to, but I didn't do it.
And
What's it all about, anyway?
just one moment. I understand that you were dismissed from the factory.
I never killed him.
Like you threatened him.
Wow, I didn't mean it. It's just words.
And where were you then between 1 and 3:30 this afternoon?
In the pub.
That makes a refreshing change.
Right?
All the time.
Well, most of it.
And what time did you leave?
I got kicked out about 2 o'clock. I think it was a bit hazy.
And after that?
I went for a walk.
Where?
I can't remember.
You can't remember. You can't remember.
No, I remember.
Mr. Hawkins, a man is killed after you were heard threatening him. And at the time of the murder, you can't remember where you were. Look, you're covered in blood. Things aren't looking good for you.
But I didn't do it.
It's enough. Constable, caution him, lock him up.
Oh, boy, no, please, sir. No, I didn't do it. No, sir.
One must, of course, be kind to the servants. But it seemed to me you were overdoing it a trifle.
Oh, was I? Well, I don't recall whether I was or not. I don't particularly remember.
I don't think you needed to kiss her, dear.
Well, did I kiss her? I don't remember. Listen, Mother, you don't happen to have any money on you, do you?
Money, dear? Of course not.
Well, look, Mother, I don't mean to seem indelicate, but you don't happen to know when Father's will will be read, do you?
Freddie, and your father is still warm, practically.
Well, he never was exactly warm, was he? To either you or me.
Freddie, you mustn't say these things.
Well, why not? It's true, isn't it? He made our lives a misery, didn't he?
Don't say it in front of Inspector Kent, will you?
He already knows that Father and I had a row, unfortunately.
Oh, no.
Well, Mother, don't worry. They've got Charlie Hawkins in custody now.
Oh, poor Mr. Hawkins.
Would you rather it was me?
Oh, Agatha, darling, oh, where have you been?
Father threw me out, Mother. Didn't he tell you?
Oh, he never said a word. Oh, how could he? Where did you go to, my love?
Well, I went to stay with Aunt Margaret, but a policeman boarded the train I was on. What's happened? They don't tell me anything.
Prepare yourself for a shock, Agatha. Your father is dead.
Dead? How?
In the study.
With the gloving tool.
Does that mean I can come home now?
I didn't expect you to be overcome with grief, but you could be a little bit decently shocked, dearest.
Well, of course it's shocking, but it was bound to happen sometime or other.
Miss Johnson, why do you say it was bound to happen?
I would appreciate it if you would not before entering Inspector Kent.
Beg your pardon, ma'am. Miss Johnson, once again, why do you say your father was bound to be murdered?
Well, everybody hated him, even his family.
Oh, Agatha.
Well, it's true.
Miss Johnson, when the police picked you up, I understand you were on a train heading to Salisbury to see your aunt.
That's right.
And what time did you leave the house?
It would have been about midday, I suppose.
And you were heading towards Sidmouth to stay with your aunt.
I caught the 4:30 from Montacute.
And what did you do between midday and 4:30, Miss Johnson?
I went for a walk.
You see, in the CID, we observe with a trained eye. I'm pretty sure I shall find something that you local chaps have missed. The trained eye, gentlemen.
What is it, ma'am?
It looks like a woman's writing.
They have some scone.
Local dress.
Darling, we cannot be happy whilst he is still alive. Leave all to me. Everything will be all right. I will.
A very valuable clue.
Well, it's not Albert Johnson's writing.
Of course it's not Albert Johnson's writing. You can tell that from the content.
Very, very dramatic.
Would make sense, however, if it were a woman's writing, if it were Mrs. Johnson.
Well, as I say, it's very dramatic.
Oh, it's the way these people speak, Inspector, trust me. I have a great deal of experience with this sort of family.
Well, shall I get Miss Johnson in then, ma'am?
Not yet. Let me just get the sequence of events straight. Now, Mr. Johnson was killed sometime before 3:30.
That's right, ma'am.
The last person to have seen him alive being his wife, when they had lunch together.
Ma'am?
He was killed with an unusual implement, a tool used in the gloving trade, nasty looking thing.
Well, apparently Mr. Johnson made his way up in the gloving trade, and this was his first gloving tool. According to his son, he kept it to remind himself of how well he'd done.
And it was kept where?
In the study, ma'am. I believe he used it to open envelopes.
Now, Mr. Johnson had quarrelled with both his children that morning, and with Charlie Hawkins, whom he dismissed from his employ. And we see, from this new piece of evidence, that his wife also had a motive to murder him. So, the only people without a motive were the housemaid and the cook.
It was the cook's afternoon off, ma'am.
And the housemaid?
She said she went for a walk.
Odd.
Not particularly odd, ma'am. It appears the whole household is extremely fond of walking.
And yet, none of them has an alibi. No one saw them out and about.
We did. We saw them.
Seymour!
They're all hurting me.
I hardly touched you.
Shut up and sit down, you lot.
How did you lot get into the house anyway?
Do you know this lot, Seymour?
They're some of Charlie Hawkins' kids. Always up to some mischief, they are.
Now then, what were you saying about having seen somebody? Who did you see? And when?
We seen Mr. Frederick with Rose. They was kissing.
Where?
On the lips.
Where were they when they were kissing?
In the summer house. Cool. They was going out at Hammer and Tom. They were horrid.
You should have been snooping, should you?
All right, Constable. Now then, do you know what time it was when you saw them in the summer house?
2:30.
How can you be so sure of the time, young lady?
Because Rose asked us to give Mr. Frederick a message that morning saying, meet at 2:30 in the summer house.
And how do you know what it said?
Because we read it, didn't we?
So you knew that they were going to go to the summer house at 2:30, and you waited so that you could watch them.
No law against it.
Think, young lady, you'll find it's generally frowned upon.
Never mind that now. How long were they in the summer house for?
Not long. Rose said she had to get back to work at 3.
So they went back to the house together.
No, Mr. Frederick, he went first. He said he was going to have another pop at his old man.
Now think very, very carefully. Were those his exact words?
Yeah, that's what he said. We think he's done him in. Yeah.
You done him in, alright? That's right.
Yeah, he did.
And what did you do next? After they'd left the summer house?
We went home.
So now you can let our dad out, can't you? You cannot have done it anyhow. He was drunk.
Now then, you leave the detective work to us. Constable Seymour, I assume you know where these children live?
Yes, sir. Down Paradise. Come along, Eva, and don't go touching anything.
I said don't touch anything.
Well, it seems that Mrs. Johnson wasn't the last person to see her husband alive.
Possibly. Possibly.
And young Mr. Johnson lied as to his whereabouts. If he went to see his father at just after 3, and the body was found just before 3:30, we have the case sorted, ma'am.
There is still this piece of paper, Inspector. Darling, we cannot be happy while he is still alive. Leave all to me. Everything will be all right. I will.
Yes, but Mr. Johnson could have written that. And his father wouldn't have been too happy him marrying Rose Johnson Palmer if that's what was in his mind. He could have cut him out of his will and left him without a shilling.
Does it sound like the sort of thing that Mr. Johnson would have written?
Well...
Exactly. No, Inspector. In this business, sometimes one has to use one's intuition. Detective work isn't all about knocking on doors and wearing size 11 boots. Subtlety. That's what's called for here intuition. Would you say that the bond between a mother and son is close?
I suppose so, ma'am.
Now then, suppose Mrs. Johnson was carrying on with some man.
I can't quite imagine it, ma'am.
Well, try, Inspector. She has a lover somewhere. Penniless, I dare say. Mrs. Johnson needs to get rid of her husband, but hang on to his fortune for herself and her lover. She writes to her lover, telling him that she will kill her husband. But she has trouble bringing herself to the point. Shortly before 3, she hears loud voices coming from her husband's study. She's just about to enter when her son comes out and tells her that his father is going to cut him out of his will. At last, in maternal defence of her young, she has the spur to do what she has promised her lover she will do. She rushes into the study, attacks her husband with a gloving tool, and then flees the house. A few minutes later, the maid, Rose, enters the study and finds the body.
Yes.
Well then, if it was Mrs. Johnson's maternal instinct that led her to do what she did, it is through that maternal instinct that we will persuade her to make a confession. Psychology, Inspector Kent. Psychology.
charged Hawkins yet, Chief Inspector?
Not yet. A new witness has come forward, which puts quite a different complexion on this case.
Well, a new witness? Who?
Mr. Johnson. Why didn't you tell us you'd had a second interview with your father and at the time of his murder?
Who told you?
Never mind who told me. You asked him again for money to pay off your gambling debts, didn't you?
All right, yes, I tell you I was desperate.
And did you also tell him that you wanted to get married?
Married? Freddie, are you getting married?
Oh no, you don't mean Rose?
Don't you say a word against her, Mother. All right, all right. Point is that I love Rose. I love her and I want to marry her.
You mean Rose? Our Rose? Oh, very odd of you, Freddie. And why should he want to marry me, Miss Agatha?
But darling, she's a servant.
What I am saying, Mr. Johnson, is that you had motive and opportunity, and you were the last person to see your father alive. Mr. Johnson, I am arresting you for the murder of your father, Mr. Albert Johnson. Mrs. Johnson, is there anything you would like to say to me?
Detective Inspector, it wasn't Freddie. It couldn't have been.
And why couldn't it have been?
Because it was me. I killed Albert.
You see, Inspector, psychology.
Mother! Don't take any notice of her, Detective Inspector. It wasn't her, it wasn't. It was me.
Now, Miss Johnson, it's a very serious matter, you know, lying to the police.
But it's true. It was on account of the baby, you see. That's right. I went to see Father that afternoon to beg him to change his mind about making me leave. He said he would consider it if I told him who the father is.
And you did?
That's right. Only it made him a little bit more angry.
Well, Miss Johnson, who is the father?
Charlie Hawkins.
How could you?
And what happened next?
Well, just at that moment, Charlie appeared at the open window. Oh, he'd been drinking. When he climbed in, Father snatched up the gloving tool. I thought he was going to kill him. There was a struggle, and next minute...
Miss Johnson, how come it was Charlie Hawkins with the blood on him, and not you?
Well, I did have blood on me, but I went upstairs to get changed.
And if all this is true, then what, Mrs. Johnson, might I ask, is the meaning of this?
That?
You admit this is your handwriting?
Well, yes it is.
And are we to understand from this that you have a lover?
A lover? Mother, really, I do not understand how you can be so superior over me and Charlie Hawkins, if that is the case.
A lover? Of course I don't have a... Can I read that, please?
Well?
One moment, Detective Inspector. May I ask if my daughter did inadvertently stab my husband, would that be considered self-defense?
Yes, I think that could be looked upon as self-defense.
Well then, I think I can explain this piece of paper.
Very well. To whom were you writing?
I wasn't writing to anyone. I was writing a novel.
A novel?
Yes, my husband didn't approve of novels. He didn't even like me reading them. When he found out I was writing one,
He was angry.
He was furious.
And what time did this altercation take place?
At 6 minutes past 1.
That's very exact.
Well, yes, that's right. Albert was very particular about lunch being at 1 o'clock sharp, you see.
Okay, and exactly what time did lunch finish?
Well, it was about 1:45, I suppose. Albert said he had some work to do in his study. It's what he always did after lunch. Well, he called it working, but generally he was having a nap.
And what did you do?
Well, I went to my little sitting room to work on my novel. I thought I would be safe, but he came to find me. He had left a copy of his will on the desk, and he accused me of moving it. When he saw what I was doing, he took my manuscript back with him to his study.
And you followed him?
No, he was going to destroy my manuscript. I had been years writing it, years.
There was a tussle. A piece of the manuscript was torn off. Your husband was angry. You were frightened. You picked up the gloving tool to defend yourself.
No, I didn't. I grabbed my manuscript and ran upstairs to hide it.
And did your husband follow you?
No, he didn't. Running was not his forte. Besides, it would have been undignified.
So, you are retracting your confession. You were saying now that you did not kill your husband.
No, I didn't.
And you, Miss Johnson, maintain that it was you who killed your father.
Yes.
Charlie Hawkins. First he's sacked, then he's looked up. At the pub. Did anybody see him at the pub? Did you see him at the pub? He was there. I know he was.
Oh, good gracious. Who on earth could that be? Answer the door, Rose.
I don't, madam. Supposing they violent.
I can go.
I don't care what you say. They've got my Charlie locked up, and it weren't him what done it.
Mrs. Hawkins, how dare you force your way into my house?
Oh, I dare's all right. Here, are you in charge?
No, ma'am. No, this is Detective Inspector Pride. She's in charge of the investigation, ma'am.
Well, my Charlie never did no murder, so you can just let him out.
According to Miss Johnson, you are correct. Your husband did not commit the crime, but he was present when murder was done.
Well, I happen to know he wasn't. What does Miss Agatha know about it anyway?
According to Miss Johnson, her father tried to attack your husband.
No, what would he do that for?
He had his reasons, Mrs. Hawkins.
There's something going on here. Something you're not telling me.
Oh, well, it's all going to come out anyway. I'm carrying Charlie's child, Mrs. Hawkins.
Why, you little slut!
How dare you talk to me like that?
Calm down. That's enough.
Mrs. Hawkins, what were you saying about knowing your husband? Where was he yesterday afternoon?
Let me at her!
Mrs. Hawkins! Calm down, or I'll have you arrested for breach of the peace. Now then, do you know your husband's whereabouts yesterday afternoon?
Well, he was with me, of course.
Can anybody corroborate that?
What?
Did anybody else see your husband?
Well, yeah, the rent man helped me get him up the stairs. See, I heard all this singing in the street. Pubs are thrown out. I knew it was Charlie. Drunk again. Good for nothing lay about. was, passed out. Well, there's no way I was going to get him up the stairs on my own, so the rent man helped me.
Oh, yes.
Oh, no calls to look at me like that, Detective Seymour, Inspector Seymour. He were collecting the rent.
What time was this?
Well, just after the pub threw out. I was expecting him any time after that. Well, before he got thrown out, of course.
It'll be 2 o'clock, ma'am.
2 o'clock, thank you. And what time did he leave the house again?
Well, he came to about 4:30. I told him to get himself up to the vicarage to find out about the gardening job.
Constable Seymour, I think you had better take Mrs. Seymour home and afterwards go up to the vicarage and see if the vicar can confirm that Mr. Hawkins was there at the time.
Well, are you going to let my Charlie go?
We'll see.
This isn't over. Finish, Mrs. La-di-da.
It seems to me that all I've heard from this family so far is a tissue of lies. Miss Johnson, would you care to amend your statement?
Detective Inspector, I would like to withdraw my withdrawal of confession. I did, in fact, murder my husband.
No, it was me.
Actually,
No! That is enough! Inspector Kent and I will go back to the station. We will return here tomorrow morning, by which time I hope you have all sorted out your stories. Good afternoon.
Mrs. Johnson, Miss Johnson.
what on earth did you make up that ridiculous story for, Agatha?
Well, it was to save Mother. I thought Father had finally pushed her too far. I thought she'd cracked and actually done it.
Oh, darling, you are so sweet.
But then I realised it wasn't her, and that only left one other person. I thought I would get off if it was self-defence. But for you, Freddie, it would have been a murder charge.
You told that story to protect me.
Oh, my brave, darling child.
Darling nincompoop. How on earth could you think I could do that to Father?
What? You didn't?
No, I jolly well did not.
Well, hang on a minute. If Mother didn't, and I didn't, Charlie didn't, and you didn't,
Then there's only one person it could be.
Rose! Rose! Why?
Because he was going to cut you out of his will. That's why.
How'd you know?
He called me in just after you went in, trying to twist his arm for some more cash again. Called me in to open the window. He was like that. Never shift a foot if you can get a servant to do it. Well, there was his will on the desk, and I knew he was going to cut you out of it, and there'd be no money left for us. So instead of going out, I sat quietly. He didn't notice me. Nobody notices the servants, do they? I waited for a bit. His head started nodding. His head went back. Almost an invitation it was.
Oh, you cut his throat in his sleep.
Blood everywhere. I pulled out the gloving tool. I ran next door. Madam!
Rose, how could you do that? My own father!
If you'd had my life, you'd do anything for money too. Once we were wed, I was going to grab the money and run away with the man I really love.
I thought you loved me.
Loved you, Freddie? What woman would look twice at you when she's had Charlie? Hawkins? Well, I ain't hanging around here to get pinched by the police. I'm off!
Stop her! Stop her! Stop her! Please! Stop her!